attending my session, Governing Diversity, Leadership in Media, Innovating Access and Accountability. My name is Danielle Green, and I'm a finance executive at A&E Networks. I've been in the industry for about 10.5 years, working in management as an executive. And I started out as a freelancer, a production accountant. I did some higher education. I went to one of the world's best film institutes called the American Film Institute. I studied producing. I was a fellow in the producing discipline. So what I'd like to talk about in this presentation is how the media industry is, what the media industry is doing to diversify and create more access and accountability for DEI and inclusion initiatives. I'm also going to talk about how A&E defines access and accountability and some of the thinking behind what media companies are doing to hold themselves accountable to make sure they reach their goals and objectives with making more inclusive, more diverse cultures, and making sure that people from various and diverse backgrounds feel welcomed, have a voice, and feel heard within media institutions. Moving on to the next slide. So I work for a media company that is 50% owned by Disney. And it's also owned 50% by a small, well, it's not really a small, but a print company that's also invested in healthcare. It's invested in a lot of startups. And it is very positioned in a way that it has financial legs. And A&E is a company that is driven by purpose. The leader of the company believes that centering stories around love and the history of America and really connecting and relating to people is essential to making good entertainment and making entertainment that is diverse for different types of viewers. This is our president, Paul Buccieri. He is a person who loves the word kindness. And in fact, he is kind himself. He really cares about the company's employees. He wants to make A&E a company that is well sought after for people of diverse backgrounds to come in and work and really bring their talent and their level of expertise to make the company better. His way of communicating and his way of governing is really centered around creativity, collaboration, and making sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a top priority of his leadership. One of the things that Paul set out to do in changing the culture of A&E once he first arrived a couple of years ago, which I believe was back in 2017, he wanted to make sure that the company really understood what access meant and what accountability meant. And one of the things that I believe Paul wanted to hone in on with the company was really honing in on what access meant to everyone within the institution. And I think what he figured out was that access meant opportunity for folks who didn't have the built-in networks or the right education or the right social network. Most media organizations take a different approach on access. A lot of leadership teams think that access is all about having the right agent or the right representation or the right social network or the right social connections. But Paul took a different approach to that with his leadership. One of the problems he wanted to solve, or one of the obstacles of making sure that people were getting the opportunities that were systemically denied, was making sure that he understood what was happening within the media community. He wanted to make sure that, he wanted to understand that the claims that most people make about figuring out how to diversify a division was that they didn't have the right relationships, they didn't know people, they didn't really know how to connect with people of diverse backgrounds, and they just didn't know where that talent existed. And another claim was that the industry gatekeepers were set up to block diverse talent from accessing studios like A&E, studios like Disney, studios like Sony or HBO. They were blocked because agencies require, or studios require, representation from agencies. And if you don't have the right representation, like the right agent or the right attorney or the right management, you can't get access to any of these organizations if you're trying to create some sort of content. So another issue that was identified from Paul was the experience trap. A lot of folks who have the talent can't get access to studios, can't get access to media conglomerates because people don't really want to take a chance on new talent because it's a risk. There's a lot of money that goes into making movies, making television shows, and it takes a lot of money to develop talent. One of the ways that the company decided to move was to work through solving those problems by creating opportunity with identifying certain areas of opportunity, meaning what areas within the company needed to be improved upon. Well, the first thing that they looked at was employee resource groups. The company decided last year to create employee resource groups to address the needs of its employees. And another reason why the company decided to create employee resource groups is because they wanted to maintain the existing employees and they wanted to attract and recruit newer employees. The other thing was equity and parity. The company wanted to make sure that employees and newer employees coming into the company were fairly compensated and felt like they had the opportunity to grow with the company. And the third area was collecting data to measure the company's strength and weaknesses to make better decisions and to make sure that the company was growing financially and that employees felt heard, felt like they had some room to grow within the company. One of the issues that, or one of the things that occurs with retention of talent and employee opportunities is a division between talent. You have the institutionalized talent, which I consider myself to be institutionalized. I went to college, I went to film school, I did internships, I did apprenticeships, and I was able to work my way into the industry. The other side of it is a socialized talent pool, where there are people who don't necessarily take the route that I took, which was the institutionalized route. They take a route where they go to either trade schools or they get some sort of talent through trade school or an apprenticeship, and then they make their way into the industry by figuring out how to connect themselves to a union. So one of the things that A&E decided to do in order to access and to tap into talent was to create talent relationships and to develop talent programs. Those talent programs look like in the form of talent programs that have apprenticeships, shadowing components, which turn into job opportunities. One of the things that I think A&E is really good at and really excelling at is thinking about how to give opportunity with love, because at the end of the day, in order to sustain itself and in order to compete with the bigger companies like your Netflix, your Googles, and your Amazons, you have to really attract the best talent. And because these companies are so flushed with money and so wealthy, compared to A&E, the real reason they want to be able to account for and be able to make culture and recruitment and retention in building and developing talent a main tenet is because they see in the future that talent is the way to be able to be successful and to really be able to sustain itself and to be able to operate and function in a lean capacity. I'm going to move on to the next section, which is transparency matters and creating accountability. So one of the steps that A&E and majority of the media companies are taking is mandating diversity within its workplace and addressing programs that are driven by its employees. So the programs I speak about that are driven by employees are employee resource groups. And the trend for these employee resource groups is to really help employees within the company find their tribe and really feel like they feel heard, welcomed, comfortable, able to grow and be developed within the company. And some of the action steps that a lot of the media companies are taking are establishing these DEI initiatives like the employee resource groups and benchmarking those goals and objectives so that they can measure their outcomes. One of the things that they're also doing is making recruitment, retention, and promoting high potential talent from diverse backgrounds a main priority. And last, they want to make sure that they're able to answer for any wrongs that could have been done so that they can make sure that they do better. This slide is a slide that I want to introduce you guys to, and it's a political term called the Overton Window. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the political commentator Glenn Beck, but he wrote a book called The Overton Window. And this book was, and the term Overton Window was named after a policy analyst called Joseph P. Overton. Joseph P. Overton believed that the Overton Window is a range of policies and political acceptable Overton Window is a range of policies and politically acceptable to the mainstream population at a given time. It is also known as the window of discourse. Overton described the window as a spectrum from one free to less free with regard to government intervention, oriented within a vertical structure or axis to avoid comparison with the left-right political spectrum. So the reason why I bring up the Overton window is because the public perception back in 2020 started to change in light of the George Floyd murder by the police. And A&E had this very highly rated series called Live PD, which was pulled in wake of George Floyd's death. The company grew a conscience. It decided that it was going to cancel the program because at the moment and at the time of history, they knew that the Overton window was shifting. And as you can see in this slide, I have a few examples of gas car, electrical cars. At the time, electrical vehicles were unheard of, but now here in California, you see them running around all over the place. Gun legislature has been a main issue right now in our current political discourse. Some people say ban guns, other people say no, don't ban guns. But we're starting to see the trend that guns are becoming less acceptable in our society. And this is a really good example of what the Overton window looks like. I tell you this because media companies had to face the reality of the Overton window. They had to address the discourse of society by looking at themselves and seeing that in order to be on par, in order to be relevant in society, they had to figure out a way to diversify themselves so that people wouldn't lose sight or lose interest in watching their content. So A&E fell into that Overton window, and they had to really quickly pivot and figure out how they were going to quickly change their programming. And by doing that, they had to identify accountability channels. And those kind of accountability channels looked like the impact of the external environment. Example was George Floyd. People were outraged. And to have a crime show that was showcasing the police brutality, showcasing even murders that took place live on television was something that the company had to deal with and had to realize that the public perception was changing and that they had to act immediately to make sure that they were not caught up in the tides of being on the wrong side of history. So A&E had to become socially aware. And the same is true for other media companies. They had to become socially aware because at the end of the day, revenue is very important to the sustainability of these companies. Media companies now see the connection of diversity with revenue. Lack of diversity shows a direct correlation with loss of revenue. It is estimated from 2021 to 2025, $10 billion of innovation revenue will be lost because of lack of diversity. This is why I believe governing diversity in media is so important. It hits the bottom line for most media companies, and they all see that diversity can really improve their innovation and performance. I'm going to talk about a little bit about how they came up with this and how this was introduced to them and how they realized that they were losing billions of dollars on lack of diversity. The Harvard Business Review partnered with Munich Technical University to survey 1,700 companies across 8 different countries: the US, France, Germany, China, Brazil, India, Switzerland, and Austria. And they examined a variety of industries, company sizes, measuring with using management positions with respect to gender, age, national origin, career path, industry background, education, culture, ethnicity. And they surveyed all of these companies, and it revealed to them that out of all of these companies, the companies that had a fresher look and a more diverse workforce had a portfolio that was more profitable. And so media companies set out to look at how they could be more profitable by making their companies more diverse. Thus, all of the DEI initiatives, thus the push to making sure that BIPOC representation is 40 to 60% increase within these companies. And it goes to show that there is a statistical correlation between diversity and innovation. The survey found that most diverse enterprises were also most innovative as measured by the freshness of their diversity. And they also saw a correlation between the revenue mix. I'm going to conclude this because I know that I need to set aside some time for Q&A, but thank you so much for tuning in and listening to my presentation. I hope that you've gotten, some valuable information out of it. And I'm going to turn on my camera and going to start with some Q&A.
There's actually a Q&A for 30 minutes scheduled after this meeting.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah. But
Sorry
that's okay.
that.
We can start that here if there's a question we want to throw out, and then we can immediately move people into the Q&A once your time is up.
Okay. Sure thing.
And so you're aware, Danielle, we can still see your screen.
Okay, let me just turn that off. Stop. Okay. All right.
Does anyone have a question that they would like to ask now before they go into the Q&A?
I can go ahead and ask one if no one else has.
Oh, go ahead.
But as someone who's a recent Master's of Social Work graduate, and my passion is understanding how media affects the way we see the world, and how when we put things on the TV and how that's represented, we inherently have these stigmas now against people and groups and organizations. So as someone who is coming from the mental health field, how do I guess, step into the world of media and bring myself as like a consultant or something that to ensure that things that are being represented on TV are accurate and true?
Well, I think you're asking the right person. We can actually set up a call about that, because
Oh, wow.
A&E is very, very open to that type of thought. And I think it's part of like our business strategy to make sure that we are making sure that we're representing people in the best light. And I think the trajectory now with the company is to make sure that we entertain with purpose. So if you are interested in coming and having a Zoom conversation about that with some of my co-chairs, because I am part of a DEI initiative with the company, and I'm one of the co-chairs for Diversity Behind the Camera. And I think that's a great subject matter to kind of expose, some of our senior management to, because they're aware of it, but it's really good to have kind of someone who has the academic knowledge and the study to come in and talk about those things, because I think sometimes we live in tunnel vision, and sometimes we're not realizing how what we project on camera and on screen does impact people. It does impact their psyche. It does impact how they feel about themselves. And so I think it's really important to bring voices like yourself into the company to talk about those things. So we could totally talk about how we can set that up for you.
Well, great, thank you. If you feel comfortable sharing your contact info, I don't know if other people in the conference would like to have it, but I would love to.
Yeah.
We still have about 7 minutes until we move into the Q&A portion.
Well, there's a question inside of the chat, so I'll go ahead and read it. It's from Ms. Hawkins from the FBI, and it says, do you think DEI will continue to trend upward in the entertainment industry?
I do believe so. And the reason why I believe it's going to continue to trend, because it's been shown that it does have a direct correlation with innovation revenue. And a lot of these smaller companies like A&E, they really want to be able to find their niche and find their audience. And they really see their audience as being a diverse audience. And I believe that companies who see the light, companies who see that diversity is the key to making successful and programming that is going to entertain and really reach diverse audiences. Because when we talk about diversity, we're not just talking about race, we're talking about age, we're talking about gender, we're talking about culture, we're talking about ethnicity, we're talking about a dynamic array of different types of diversity. It's not just one thing, it's everything, right? So I think that diversity is going to continue to be a hot topic. I think it may not be as hot in terms of like folks saying we gotta have diversity. I think it's going to be something where it's like it's a normal thing to have diversity. So it's going to become normalized, and I don't think it's going to be talked about it as much because it's going to become normal. Does that answer your question?
Hi, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, it does. Thank you. I also put another question in the chat box. I think Dr. Deborah was going to read it, but if she's okay, I can read it now.
Do we have time? Devin?
Yeah, we have some time. Sure.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Hawkins.
All right. And so my last question was, so that, you stated that DEI was trending upward. So has it made casting more open? Because sometimes for me, I watch a lot of the different streaming networks. Do you think that it's going to make casting more open? Because for me, sometimes I feel like I'm seeing the same types of people, on the sitcoms, or they get recast for another role. So I'm just kind of wondering, are we going to see like different, different styles across the diverse spectrum?
I think we are. I think you're going to see a lot of different styles across the diverse spectrum because it's something that's making storytelling a lot more interesting. You know what I mean? And I think that you are going to see a trend where you see more. And as I said before, it's going to become normal where it's like, it's a natural thing to see. And I think that because of the fact that there was this glass ceiling that was created to prevent people who had talent to enter into this area, because of course, media or film is the seventh art. It was really a medium for very wealthy people. Now, because of technology and the movement of technology and how technology is made readily available to people, where you can actually shoot a movie on your phone, a lot of people can create content, and there's a lot of different distribution channels like your YouTubes that you can create talent. And a lot of these media companies are in search of that talent through those different platforms like YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. So you're going to see a lot of diversity, and you already are seeing a lot of diversity with a lot of the technology companies. I mean, it's where you look, you know what I mean? So if you're looking at network standard television, of course, you're going to say, wow, that's really skewed to one culture. But when you start expanding where you're looking and you're getting your entertainment, because as you know, entertainment it's been very tribal in a sense where people watch or gravitate to things that they're interested in. Now you're going to see it where it's like the way that the industry is moving, it's consolidating itself. And a lot of the smaller companies are going to actually be acquired. You're going to see more of that converging, and thus you're going to see more diversity. So to answer your question, yes, I do see more character diversity.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And on that note, if you have any other questions for Ms. Danielle Green, will you please enter breakout room 2? And if you need any assistance, if you need any assistance getting there, just let me know and I can move you to the room.
Thank you, Danielle.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you in the breakout room.
Okay.